Good evening, everyone. My name is Sidhi Dhir, and I serve as the Executive Director for TiE Singapore. We are back with the third and last session on the series of mental health and wellness. The topic for today's session is anxiety. Our guru for this series is Subba Vaidyanathan, co-founder and chief program architect of Sattvaa Private Limited. With the increasing disruption in the daily routines, many of us are struggling to adjust to the new normal and are having trouble handling anxiety. Subba would be sharing on how we could face this mental demon with his 3 steps to power through anxiety. Over to you, Subba.
Thank you, Sidhi, and always a pleasure to be back with TiE and the TiE community. Thank you all for joining. And today is going to be a very, very important session because as I was working through and making the material ready for all of you, I was thinking, this is really personal. This is going to be very personal to each of you. And I'm going to try to make this real for you by sharing some personal stories as we go along. Because anxiety is something, if we do not understand how real it is, then we always have only a conceptual understanding of it. So today, I'll make it real. And I want you to reflect as you go along on your anxieties so that you make this functional for you, these 30 minutes to make it really impactful so that you take something back at the end of it which you can implement starting minute 31. Not tomorrow, but minute 31. I just want to recap 2 things, the last 2 sessions. The first we did was how do we stay strong in these times and how do we stay mentally functional and strong. And the main reason for that was we are making very, very important choices in these times. Choices about our life, choices which impact our family, our teams, our business, and our organizations. So therefore, it is very, very important for us to stay mentally, physically, and emotionally fit. And that was the 5 steps we had. The 5-step hack, if you will, to stay fit. Exercise, keep a daily routine, activity of the right side of the brain, the creative, the heart, and the soul. Hang out with someone that you can have an open conversation with and have a story to inspire yourself. We moved on. Last week, we spoke about leadership and how do we lead strong. And here we talk about the 5-step Ricky, as I call it, resolve the pain that exists in you and in your teams, inspire yourself and your team with your story, with our story, courage, be able to construct it and then be able to communicate it. Communicate with clarity, communicate with confidence, communicate with empathy. And most importantly, build trust through empowering people. You may not empower them in making the decisions. You may empower them by participating in the decision making. You may not even empower them in participating in the decision making, but you empower them by giving them the confidence that they can execute on the decisions that are being made. Whichever way, that is empowerment. But make them feel that you trust them. Trust is the magic word here in these times because you cannot be present everywhere. So having covered those 2, today's session, as I said, we make it really personal. We're going to talk about anxiety. In all the sessions that I've run in the last few weeks, 80% of the people, 80% say their sleep is disrupted. If your sleep is disrupted, do not feel worried because you're just part of that 80%. Nothing unusual is happening. The reason why our sleep is disrupted is because our adrenaline levels are very high. Our adrenaline levels are very high because we feel very anxious. And anxious comes because we are having a regular amygdala attack. Amygdala is that part of the brain which helps to protect us from being hurt physically or these days, mentally or emotionally. To protect ourselves, it's just like being out in the forest at night and you do not know what is out there in the forest. So it's very hard to go to sleep because your adrenaline levels are super high. You're very focused. You want to make sure that every step you take is not the wrong step, that you're fully aware of everything that is around. That is the reason why we are unable to sleep properly. Either the quality of sleep is not good, the quantity of sleep is not good, and overall it is disrupted. This is the reason why this is happening. But the magic of the stress is that if we can get more prefrontal cortex or our thinking brain, our cognitive brain into this play, we are able to process the anxiety better rather than just fight it, rather than fight what is out there, because things are always changing out there and we cannot keep fighting. It is a constant moving target. So that's the reason and the root cause of this. Now, we all understand it. This is not anything new to us. So why is it in the last few weeks, this is much, much higher? This is the reason. There is too much demand for change. The way of working is different. Our way of decision making is different because our time pressure is very, very high. The amount of data available to us, very, very low, because we can't predict what is going to happen. The past is not a predictor of the future. Your clients are disrupted, so therefore things are changing. Your teams are disrupted, so therefore things are changing. Your supply chains are disrupted, things are changing. And you're even being asked to be told, pivot or perish. Pivot to what? So there's so much of change and demand is so high on this prefrontal cortex. That is why the brain is overwhelmed. So you all knew that anxiety can be managed by using my cognitive brain. Nothing new. We all knew that. But the demand on that cognitive brain is so high. So therefore, we are trying to push everything back and try to process through the amygdala, through our anxious brain, as I call it. And that's not helping either. And we feel overwhelmed. So the summary is too much demand for change. Just remember that, because this demand overload is just like what happens in a power circuit. And where you have so much of demand, there is a crash. Whether it's a bandwidth crash or a power circuit crash, this is what happens, right? So how do we shift that? In the tech world, you'll clearly understand that what I'm going to say is going to be something very easy and intuitive for you to understand. And you may wonder, why didn't I think of it? Because all we are asking is, how do we manage the demand? How do we prioritize the demand for the bandwidth or the power? That's all we are saying. So the superpower that we all have, which is present in the form of, let's say, the wind and the sun, nothing needs to be generated, can be used in three ways: focus, intention, and training. I call it FIT, easy to understand, right? I always like these short phrases because it's easy for us to remember, right? So I call it FIT. Now, what do I mean by each of those? So remember the problem: the demand for change exceeds your ability to process change. So what do? First, I want you to take a moment, and I'm going to make you do this in real time, and write down all the things that are bothering you, because those are all the things that you're asking for change, demand of cognitive brain. Just write down super fast, write it down or type it in your notes. I'm going to give you just 1 minute. I want this to be real for you. And I'll check my time. Have you got it? Just keep writing down. Don't qualify this as right, wrong, good, bad. Why is this coming? Nothing. Intuitively, whatever comes, just write it down. I'm going to give you 15 seconds more. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So now that whatever list you have, just hold that close to you and don't ask yourself yet, why are all this coming up? First, I want you to start looking at focus now. First, pick with respect to your work, one thing, only one thing from that list, which is the most important thing that you wish to change. It could be because the impact is very high. It could be because the frequency with which that is interrupting you is very high. Whichever way it may be, just pick that intuitively. Next, pick one thing with respect to your life that you want to change. One thing. It could be your health, your well-being, your mental well-being, something to do with your relationship, something to do with how you work, family, finances, could be anything, right? Just one thing. Pick that, move on. Now I'm going to give you a bonus pick. You can pick this from anything from that list, right? It could be work, life, whatever else it may be. One bonus pick. So only 3 things that you can pick to shift. This is how we manage the demand on the cognitive brain. You pick these 3 things, and then I'll tell you what you're going to do. So you need to focus. You need to make sure your demand is limited to these 3. Whenever the rest come up, you're going to say, I'm focusing on these 3. I'm going to pick you next week or next month. So it is most important that you make progress with respect to these 3, because these are the most important thing as you intuitively chose it. Now, the natural question which will come up at the end of this is, but I had a list of 20 or I had a list of 10. Are these 3 the right things to pick? Right? So here is the acid test for it. How do you test your focus? First, there are 2 whys that you will use, just 2 whys. First why, you have to ask yourself to get to the root of the issue. Why is it an issue? And second, you have to ask yourself, why is it important to me? Now, I'm going to take this moment to get vulnerable and share with all of you what are my 3 personal picks for myself. Okay? So I'm just going to put it out there. I know there are 70, 80 of you are there. I'm going to say this. With respect to my work, and today, prior to this, I was running programs face-to-face for organizations. I was running a retreat center in Bali. Now, when I take a look at this, my retreat center in Bali has no revenues right now. Absolutely no revenues, right? So, and when I look at my programs, I can no longer deliver it face-to-face. So for me, there are 2 things that I picked. One was work, and this was another one is a bonus pick. The work issue was, how do I keep my people in Bali engaged? How do I make sure that we build a trust? I have 25 staff who work for me there. How do I build that relationship of trust? How do I make sure that the upkeep of the place is good and right? So that was one of the things that I picked. That was my work. The bonus pick was, how do I pivot my whole model from face-to-face delivery to digital delivery? And I will tell you the results as we go along, but these are my 2 picks. With respect to my life, my biggest pick here was, how do I get out there and do an act of service every single day? That is what I believe keeps me strong mentally, physically, and emotionally. So these are my 3 picks. What were yours? I tested it by saying, why is it an issue? The first one, I'll just take the example of Bali. is very important to me because of the principle with which I have built my company. I wanted to make sure I hire locals and I give back to the local community. I build a sustainable business, which is sustainable experience, right? Connected to nature and all of that, but most importantly, connected to the local community. For me, keeping those staff employed was therefore very important. And that is why it was an issue, and that is why it was super important to me. I wanted to build that bond and trust, and this was my time to grow up, be tall, and build that bond. So that is one example for why it is an issue and why is it important to me. The daily service was, why is it an issue? It's an issue because if I don't do it, I feel I'll be mentally weak. I will feel that when I look back on this time, this is a time for me to have been able to give a gift, of do something with the gift that I have, with the skill that I have, and I didn't use it. And that goes against the values on which I have built my company. That is why it's important to me. And that's why I've taken 2 of the 3 examples and shared it with you. What is yours? Test it this way. Use the 2 whys to test whether your focus is right. If not, go back and pick once again, make the choice, push something out and get something else in. This is how you test your focus, right? Now that I have my focus ready, what do I do next? Now, this is very interesting. And you may wonder what these pictures mean. So let me try and annotate this for you so that you can see this easily. Okay, here you go. So this is thought. This guy is thinking. This guy is speaking or screaming. This guy is taking some action, maybe hitting someone, I don't know what, but some power action is being taken. Okay? This is the cycle we normally get into whenever something on the outside happens, whether it's to do with our business, whether it's something that someone says to us, some data that we see, some numbers that we see, an email we get, a WhatsApp we get, a call we make, a client we speak to. We immediately think, we speak, and we act based on our past patterns. Now, with respect to your areas of focus, here's the magic of how you walk around this wall. I want you to just take a moment and think about if you had the best outcome with respect to these areas of focus, what is your intention? Like I said, when I reflect on mine, my intention with respect to Bali is in the following. I have the trust of my staff. I am able to keep the community served. At the same time, I am able to keep my premises in fantastic shape. As I speak to you every day, they send me pictures of the painting they're doing, the polishing they're doing, the upkeep of the premises they're doing, and how they are maintaining the place when no one is there, upgrading the premises, right? With no cost to us. So I get a spick and span place, and I'm super ready when things open up, much better prepared than all other properties to launch for. Because I have an engaged set of staff, I have super premises, I'll be ready to get clients in right away. I also have incentivized my staff to get new business. So I know when things open up, I'll be one of the first people to get business. That is my intention. To live by my values and to live by the company's growth and intention. That is what it is. And that drives my thought, my speech, and my action. Question is, what drives your thought, speech, and action? So let me tell you what I did. When I thought about it this way, I asked the people in my company, what would you like? Would you like me to choose your pay, or would you like me to choose some people who would stay and some people who would leave and come back later when things opened up? They wrote me a payroll. I asked them to write me their own payroll and send it to me. Today, I pay them a paycheck based on what they wrote. I did not write them how much salary I will give them. They wrote it themselves. And trust me, what they wrote was less than what would have been given them. Less than what I would have given them. So it helped me keep my values. It helped me keep my place in great shape and ready to rock. when things open up, and built the trust, all through connecting back with my intention. So the question, what I always ask is, bring your intention, bring the power of your intention here. For all of this, write down what is the outcome you're solving for. If you leave the power of intention and complicated words aside, what is the outcome that you're solving for? What is the best possible outcome you want? And then test what should you be saying and doing in that context. Okay, so let's now move on to the T of the fit. Sorry, people. Tech issue. So the T comes in here. T is nothing but introducing a pause. So Charles Duhigg talks about this wonderfully in his Power of Habits book. But I have kind of innovated on this in this context. So what happens here is, when something happens on the outside, okay, I'll annotate this for you so you can see this very clearly. Something happens on the outside, what do you do first? First, you pause. Do not straight away start doing something. Do not start speaking. Do not start acting. But link it back to what is the outcome you're solving for. What is the intention that you have? What is the goal that you're solving for? And then think, is my speech and my action aligned to my intention, aligned to my outcome, aligned to my goal? If it's only based on your past cycle, you will not get the outcome that you're solving for. You will get the outcome which would have happened in the past, or maybe no outcome or a bad outcome. So that is why it is important for you to do the I part first, and then link your thought, speech, and action to this. Now, here are 2-3 tricks associated with this. First, I must tell you that it is very difficult to do. That is why I asked you to choose only 3 things. Do not try to apply this with respect to everything in your life. It is too overwhelming. There's too much change right now, and you will get exhausted even before you start it. This is why I have an issue with everyone who says, be mindful about drinking your coffee, be mindful about your breath, mindful about your walk, mindful about your speech. It's too overwhelming. You cannot be mindful about everything. Be mindful about the things that you mind. Things that you chose. The 3 things that you chose. Only stay focused on that. Use all your bandwidth and all your power only with respect to those 3 things. Be really, really focused. Do not think of other things right now. Let them all be as they are. Unless they become very important, then you bring them into the fold of the 3 things. If required, you can make 3, 4, but don't push yourself too much, right? It consumes a lot of power. Prefrontal cortex is just 2% of your body weight. It consumes 25% of your body power. That's why you can only take so much. So what do? When something happens, the first thing is stick with the 3 and apply this. When something happens and you say the wrong thing and you act the wrong way, it is still okay. It will happen. But that is why I gave you an opportunity to pause. To pause before you act or pause after you act. So here is an example of what could happen, right? I say the wrong thing. I realize it just after I've said. Great outcome. I'm aware. Next time I will change it. I am about to say something. I hold myself back. Great awareness. I'm making progress. I'm about to think that way, or I have thought that way. I have not yet said. I am creating the pause in between the thinking and the speaking. Great progress. I'm about to think that way, and I pause. And that is when I train my brain to think differently. So this is how we use the power of a goal that you wrote, of an outcome that you wrote, of an intention that you wrote to train the brain progressively. Progressively, action, pause before the action, train your speech. Speech, pause before the speech, train your thought. How do you train your thought? With respect to your intention or goal. So that, my friends, is my simple framework for today. I call it FIT, and just 3 steps, right? I can't fix this. This is my source of anxiety. But this is all I wanted to share with you guys today. But I wanted to ask more opportunity to ask you questions. But what I've done here is that over the last 3 sessions and even today, you have a lot of solutions. But remember this, someone wrote this comment today. I want Trump to say this. I want Lee Hsien Loong to say this. I want some prime minister to say this. I want someone to do something. And my response was very simple. As long as you are able to control what you do, what you say, what you think, that is great progress. Right now, that is the only thing in our control. And I've given you 3 sets of tools. Share, Ricky, and Fit. The question is, what will you choose to use from the time you finish this session? I'm here for you right now, but before I finish, I wanted to say this to you. Please set small goals. Don't set mega goals. That's why I asked you to pick only 3 things. If you don't have 3, pick 1. It's fine. Break up your goals into milestones. Don't try to achieve it all in 1 week. Most importantly, set your practice. Don't have a to-do list, have a today list. Focus on a today list. Every day I have a today list. I focus on my today list. I have milestones for the day and actions for the day. And lastly, most importantly, every night before I go to bed, I count my wins. I'm thankful for the small wins that I've achieved that day. Not just wins in terms of outcomes, not just wins in terms of activities and what I got done on my to-do list, but most importantly, wins in terms of how my thought changed, how I was able to train my brain. My friends, this is the deepest crisis of what all of us have faced. Today, Singapore released figures, Monetary Authority of Singapore, saying this is going to be worse than the Asian financial crisis for Singapore. But surprisingly, I feel much stronger today than any of the crises I have faced earlier in my life. That is because I have been able to train my brain. If I can, you can. I am no different from you. I just had a few hacks, and all of those hacks I've shared with you. So right now, go and conquer your brain, be the boss, and you will get through this and come through stronger, taller, and fantastic in terms of performance. You will be a new person, your business will be a new business, and you will be coming through the tunnel into a beam of new light. Don't let this crisis go to waste. Make sure you get taller. You know where to reach me. This is my email address. Someone wrote to me last time. You have my website. You have my Instagram. You have my YouTube. Sidhi will write to you. But right now, I'm here for you for a few more minutes for questions.
Thank you, Subba. Subba, one of the things that you highlighted was that don't be mindful of everything, but focus on 3 points. I understand that today the word mindful is being loosely used. Could you elaborate what you mean by the word mindful or being mindful?
So I see a number of posts talking about how mindfulness can solve the problems of today and how mindfulness should be used as a tool for today. I am a person who meditates every single day, and I run a meditation session every night. So when I am saying don't be mindful, there is possibly some reason why I'm saying it. And the reason why I say it is being mindful about everything that is going on at work in these times where everything is changing and everything looks scary is overwhelming. So we have to give ourselves an opportunity and have confidence in our judgment that this week I'm going to work on only 3 things. I'm going to focus and win these 3 things. and be able to shift the way I think and do with respect to these three things. Next week or next month, I will pick another three. So while I can be aware of everything, I should be able to park it aside and say, I'm not going to work on it now. I don't say let it go, but let it be.
But adding on to that, suppose one of the questions that was asked to us was that suppose you've got these 3 points, you know what to do. You are anxious and you know how to solve it, but you don't land up doing anything. Why does that happen?
So the reason why that happens is that we have a default behavior. And when we are under extreme pressure, we feel comfortable to go back to our default behavior because that is our comfort zone. We feel very uncomfortable to try something new when we are under tremendous pressure. But that is why the training the brain becomes very important, because we need a different behavior because things around us has changed. And that's why we need to spend some time, what I call offline, to write down what we need to do and be able to create that intended outcome and work towards that. And that's what will bring the shift in the behavior.
So, another thing which people generally face is, and like you started this session by saying that it's very difficult to sleep when you're anxious. So one of the questions was, how do you switch off? How do you say, okay, I'm going to work on my anxiety, but I want to just switch off and relax right now? That trigger does not happen.
Yeah, so I think it's important to figure out last thing at night. There are two things that people can do. First, I recommend to keep a piece of paper next to you with a pen. So you can write down at night everything that you're going to do tomorrow morning. Sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night and we are scared that we'll lose something. Then we'll end up sending a message or sending an email and trying to process that. If you had a pen and paper, you could write that down then and there. So one way is to say, yes, I'm aware. Yes, I'm anxious, but I'll put this on a piece of paper so that I feel less worried that I'll lose it. Pick it up in the morning. That's what I use.
Great, Subba. Thank you so much. I'll go down to the audience question now. The first question is, why do couples argue during lockdown?
Why do they argue when there is no lockdown?
When there is a lockdown.
So why do they argue when there is no lockdown also, right? It's not, are they arguing only when there is a lockdown? I don't think so. So they're arguing even when there is no lockdown. I'm sure they do. It's just a different construct. I'm sure both people are anxious. So it's not that you are the only one who's anxious. The other person is also anxious. So if you can recognize that and not declare that I have to win this battle, then you can have a different conversation.
Interesting. Another question is that should my personal goals be aligned to my work and company goals? And why is that necessary? If yes, why is that necessary to do that?
It depends on what you're trying to change in your life. It could be something very different. Like I said, my personal focus was serving. My focus of my company is something very different. They are not necessarily the same. And I've picked these three things to change my behavior, my thought process. My thought process in my life is today to serve. My thought process with respect to my work is to save my business. But save my business is very different in terms of how I consider saving my business. This is to save my values and trust. So coming back to the question that you asked, if you're not respect to this, but in general, if your personal values are disconnected from your company's values, you have a problem. But if your personal goals are not in the moment aligned to your company's goals, you can still have different parts of your life. So normally we have 4 parts to life. One is ourselves. One is the work we do. One is our family. And the 4th is the community that we serve. So there are 4 parts to life and they need not be perfectly aligned. But value-wise, they should all be aligned.
I'm mindful about the time, so I'm going to pick the last two questions. One is there a feel good factor that we can internalize after all of this?
So I had written this slide earlier, but I think in everything we do, we have to feel good about what we're doing. Let me clarify what I mean. So it's not just feelings are actually more important than thinking, because feeling is how we are in the moment. So every day you have to go to bed feeling good about something. And that's why I recommended in my presentation just now to count your wins for the day. If it's not a win, it surely is a learning. So it is important to feel good about what you did and what you learned.
Thank you, Subba. The last question would be, how do you make sure that a daily to-do list contributes to the goals that we have set for ourselves?
Fantastic. So you're asking a question which involves a program in itself, but let me tell you how it works. You write a story. From the story, which is what I talk about, intentions or outcomes or goals, you develop what is called as power routines. You have to have certain routines. If I'm going to be healthy, what are my routines for every single day? That is my routine, which I've fixed, 3-4 things I have to do. Aligned with that is your to-do list. So your to-do list is aligned with your routines, which are aligned with your goals. If you construct it in this manner, then you can be assured that the goals are something that you will make progress towards.
Great, Subba. Thank you so much. This was the third session of the series that we had with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Folks, in the thank you note that we'll be sending tomorrow, we would be sharing the next program that Subba is doing, not with TiE, but in general. He does daily sessions. There are workshops coming in. So feel free to attend that and to gain more. And it's glad to know that we've got a guru like Subba to help us through these anxious times. One takeaway from my side, what I have learned from you, Subba, is that in this whole situation, one thing that could help you is being optimistic. You need to feel good. You need to either it's a good news or a lesson. So that's one takeaway from my end. And it is a continuous process. Things won't change overnight, but you have to continue being positive and going towards your goal. With that, I would request everyone to please join in tomorrow for our huddle session on accessing capital in 2020. We have Swapnendu Mohanty, the Chief FinTech Officer of MAS, Helen Wong, partner with Cheeming Ventures, and the session will be moderated by Maya Hari, who's the Managing Director APAC of Twitter. It will be at 5 p.m. tomorrow. The links I share on the website, and we'll share in the thank you note as well. Subba's sessions will also be shared in the thank you note. So please be tuned and stay healthy and stay stress-free. Thank you so much, Subba, once again for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you all very much. I completely enjoyed being with all of you and wishing you all the best, all the strength, all the power.
Thanks, guys. See you. Bye-bye.